feel like our panelists today don't particularly need introductions, but I'll do it anyway. So we have the fabulous Jane Espenson. And then two wonderful stars of Husbands, Hemeon and... such steadfast fans. We have an exclusive first look at the final episode of the first season of Husbands, which we're going to roll down and then start talking about it. Groundbreaking marriage equality comedy, but it also fits into a long lineage of accidental marriage and newlywed comedies. And I'd love to know sort of what your inspirations were for the show. And sort of how you think Husbands fits into that larger tradition.
I didn't hear any of that because I was watching Cheeks play with the computer.
All right, we can do it all over again. You know, I was saying that I think one of the things that we've talked about and that we love about Husbands is that it's a marriage equality comedy, but it's also firmly in the tradition of newlywed comedies and of accidental marriage comedies. And I'd love to know how the show, despite the fact that it is politically groundbreaking, fits into that long tradition.
Yeah, I mean, it is the direct descendant of a million romance novels with this premise of we're married and we can't split up, we don't know each other very well, and many TV shows, Ned and Stacy, if any of you remember that, was a similar premise. And Cheeks even has a line in one of the episodes like, straight people do this all the time, if we weren't gay this would be a hackneyed premise. And yet you take a premise like that, a classic premise, and you add one little thing, and suddenly it's important, it's fresh, it's new, there are stories to tell that haven't been told before, and it feels like time to do the show. Like, this show is so classic in its premise that it's inevitable. TV will do this show, and we just did it first.
Yeah, I think it's, in the modern era, it's really the only premise that, it's the only way you can make that premise make sense anymore. You know, used to when divorce was a taboo, it made sense. Like, oh, we can't get married because, or we can't get divorced because that's not appropriate. But, I mean, I think now, you know, you've got two people that champion a cause and accidentally wind up in this situation, and because they champion the cause so much, they really can't get divorced without looking really, really bad and bringing on even more flack.
Yeah, it's like Clueless was a retelling of Jane Austen's Emma, and it had all to do with class distinctions. You can't marry him, he's below your class, all this stuff that wouldn't make sense anymore unless you said it in high school, where you can't socialize outside. So it's sort of a similar thing to that, about like how to keep that premise fresh. Although we didn't start with this going like, we want to do a romantic comedy, ooh, let's make it gay. We started with, we want to do a project, well, Cheeks had a project already in mind, sort of about young people in LA being forced to grow up. And so that was actually the premise we started with.
I mean, and what's great about it is that, as we discussed, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter that they're gay or that they're famous. They're just two people trying to figure out how to love each other, which is universal and wonderful moments. Yeah.
Well, and Cheeks and Sean, I wanted to ask you about what it's like to play a married couple. And I would be curious how the show has sort of interacted with your ideas as they've evolved over time about what it might be like to grow up and get married.
Do you want to start, honey?
Well, you know, it's interesting, actually, in the filming process, Cheeks and I were kind of thrown together like a married couple that just had to make it work. I mean, we were sharing hotel rooms at all the events we went to. We stayed at the, when we filmed at the hotel, we stayed at the set the entire weekend, so we were immediately already acting like a married couple behind the scenes.
By that, he means we were fighting all the time.
But how do you feel about marriage?
I like it. Why? What do you mean by that, Sean? Yeah, I would, in theory, get married, I guess. To me, it's like so far away and unfathomable, but I'll probably blink and be 35 and be like, oh my God, I'm not married, what am I doing? But, yeah. I mean, it's a nice idea. I don't really think I know anything about it, which is perfect, because I do these characters. So.
Yeah, and none of us are married, and we did have a moment of hesitation at the beginning of like, wait, we're going to write about a marriage. We've never been young people in a marriage, but isn't that perfect? These guys haven't either. You know, we can very much imagine what the obstacles would be. And there's again, everything sort of keeps coming back to lines that are in the script already, and that now when Cheeks says about marriage, I never thought beyond wanting the right to do it. Like there's something that's very current about that thought. A lot of people are grappling with this right now. So it's another way in which the show feels like it's right of the moment.
Yeah, and what I love about Brady is that his whole ideal of the marriage, the American dream, the picket fence, you know, I'm going to have my wife / Cheeks. And, but all of that's kind of shattered because they get married in such a way that it doesn't fit the dream, because it's suddenly two people unexpectedly together. And it's like, this isn't how I imagined it to be. But it turns out to be exactly what it needs to be.
In the best tradition of romantic comedy.
Exactly.
Well, and Sean, I know you in particular have you've done a lot of marriage equality volunteer work, and I was wondering, you know, how it feels to go from, you know, getting beyond the right to have it. And I know that you in particular, we were talking about this last night, have, you know, seen some of yourself as Brady.
I'm not as furious anymore. In California, we have Prop 8, and so, you know, getting out in the streets and marching to the temples. I was also raised Mormon, so it was like, I'd be calling my Mormon mother and being like, just so you know, I love you, but I'm going to go march against your temple right now because you're pissing me off with what you're doing. What I love about the show, though, is that all that's behind us now. It's like, okay, gay marriage, so what? That was so yesterday. What's next? And that's what I love about the show. It puts that one step behind us and allows, and for me as a, you know, just as a person, it's like putting it behind me now as well. It's just like looking to my future. Yes, it's an inevitability that gay marriage will happen in our lifetime. So it's just looking towards that, and how and when that happens, I don't know, but it will. And so it's like, so for now, I'm just looking for my husband.
Well, and you mentioned that, you know, in the world of the show, marriage equality is inevitable, and there's a certain extent to which Husbands is in a small way science fiction, and it's a future where, you know, we're not going state by state. And I was wondering, you know, Jane, as someone who's worked in science fiction for a long time, how you see Husbands fitting into, you know, some of that sort of speculative work.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, it fits in the tiniest possible way, which is that we start in sort of either future or alternate universe in which there's been this federal marriage equality law that sort of is the MacGuffin. Is it a MacGuffin? Not technically. It's an inciting incident that gets our story rolling. And so it's that sci-fi in the tiniest possible way. I mean, I spent years in sitcoms before I went to sci-fi, so sort of. There was a little Star Trek thing in there. But I come out of comedy, and I've always considered myself a joke writer. So for me, this felt a little like continuing the sci-fi, but a lot more like going back to my comedy roots and getting to sit there and just worry over a joke. And Cheeks and I taking turns like cutting a single word or changing a syllable in a joke to get the rhythm and the sharpness of the jokes exactly right. So it was more about that.
That's great. One thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is the way that sort of tropes and stereotypes play out in the show, because you have what is on the surface a couple that's a sort of stereotypical gay couple. You have one guy who's a butch athlete, you have one guy who's a fabulous queen, but the butch guy is kind of romantic at heart, and, you know, Cheeks' character is kind of commitment phobic. And I was wondering, you know, sort of how you thought about playing with those tropes, and, you know, the question of whether, when a role sort of falls over into a stereotype, and sort of where you draw the line.
Are you talking about that line from that last episode where Cheeks says, "Yeah, I'm the girl"? Talking about that right there.
Yes, that's exactly why that line exists, for that exact reason.
And there's other moments in it. The fact that although Sean Brady proposes, it's Cheeks who's saying, I'm not willing to go forward with this as eagerly as you are, because, like, you have to make this worth it to me. Like, Cheeks is the one who needed the prompting there. So I think it's a really refreshing way of saying that people are more than stereotypes, even if at first glance you think they might fit a stereotype. People are people.
Right.
And this really was, Cheeks' writing made sure that was coming through. I think all those lines were written by you that did that really fine character work.
Well, yeah, I've had experiences where, you know, I'll know somebody for 4 or 5 years, and I'll do something like, I don't know, drink a beer, and people are like, oh, you're so butch. Or I'll talk about like I love camping, and people are like, you're such a guy. Like they're surprised, and I'm like, well, I am a guy. Like what? Just because I'm feminine doesn't mean that like I am of the type to be like a woman, you know? And I think that everyone is that way. I know a straight couple that she's the one who knows how to hook up all the electronics and puts in the shelving and the power tools, and he cooks and, you know, doesn't like to lift a finger around the house. And so I think that everyone's that way, and yeah, we really wanted to make a point of that, just because you've got, and I wanted to show the range of gay people. You know, you can have the athletic jock, you can have the flamboyant queen, but it doesn't mean that they're going to play to every single expectation that people have.
And this has actually been a huge challenge for TV writers, trying to figure out what we're meant to do. When I started in business 20 years ago, there was sort of an unwritten rule that you would not have a feminine gay man on TV because that would be very, very bad. That would be playing into the stereotype, and you made every effort to be doing that. They're your next door neighbor, you don't know, and it's the mechanic down at the shop, and you don't know. That was what we were all sort of told to write, and that if you wrote anything different, you were playing into the stereotype, you were doing bad for the cause. And now, as we've got more representation of gay characters on TV, you start to be able to say, okay, no, let's reflect the world a little better. You can have people who some might glance at and say stereotype. Instead, you're just going like, this is the world, and look, they're real people too. And I think it's an important. It's like when you started to be able to get black villains again. And like for years and years, black actors, I'm sure, were incredibly frustrated because all they were getting to be was judges. Now there's a much wider variety of roles available because you're not any one person doesn't have to stand for the entire group they represent. They can be a person.
Well, and I like setting the audience up for, they think they know what's going to happen, and then you switch it up on them. I think that's
one of my favorite moments is when Cheeks realizes that he's won the argument about which house they live in, and he says, yes! It's like, yeah. It's great. It's a great moment.
Well, and speaking of sort of tropes and types, one of the things I like the most about the show is the way that it deals with sort of how gay men and their female best friends, how those relationships might change in an age of marriage equality. If you're no longer having to form surrogate families, you know, what roles do those relationships have and how do they work? And I'm sorry Alessandra couldn't be with us today, but I'd love to hear your thoughts and, you know, how that role came together. And, you know, I think this is an issue that other shows about marriage equality haven't really addressed. And I think it's an interesting one both for culture and, you know, for how we live our lives in the real world.
Yeah, that's true, because Will and Grace was like the ultimate, exactly, like creating your own family, and that's what they did. And now we are the next generation. That's a really good point.
Yeah, Will and Grace even ended with her getting married and with Will going off into a relationship with a cop. So, yeah, our story sort of picks up where that left off.
How do you navigate that?
Right.
Yeah, and in figuring out how Haley fit into the show, at one of the first rehearsals that we had, Alessandra said that she wanted to keep looking at Cheeks. Her instinct was to keep catching Cheeks' eye because she felt like if Haley doesn't check in with Cheeks, she doesn't know she's okay. And what does that do when Cheeks has someone else who's more important in his life? And so we tried to make a show without a lot of snark and anger. These guys love each other, they support each other. Haley and Cheeks love each other. Brady and Haley are doing the best they can.
We're trying to navigate and figure out what that
is. But there is just this little undercurrent of how much is she supporting this marriage? Is she looking forward to the day when the breakup happens and Cheeks cries on her shoulder? You know, we'll see down the road. I think she's ambivalent. Cheeks looks skeptical.
Well, I think she's
Cheeks gives a skeptical look.
I think she'd be okay with it if she had a relationship. I think it's about being left out. I think that, you know, she's not resentful, but at the same time, she's not completely okay with it. So I think she'd be a lot more like, yay, we can double date if she had someone. But as long as she's single, she doesn't really know how she feels about it.
And I think she's worried about being shut out of the relationship and hopes that she will remain at the middle of it. I'm so glad we got married, I bought you a dog. She wants to be in your life to an inappropriate extent.
You guys can both move in with me.
Yeah, exactly, which we'll play on if we get to do more. We're waiting to find out if we're going to get to do more. So there may be future stories, and she'll be in them, and we'll see more about what you're talking about that.
Maybe,
what happens with that friend dynamic.
Maybe I'll hook her up with like a baseball player, right? Like second
That would be
base.
very sexy.
You got first base.
It's funny because Alyssa actually dates baseball players in real life.
I'm also curious about sort of the space that Modern Family has opened up for these kinds of stories. And, you know, obviously, Husbands is different. I mean, you know, Cheeks and Brady are a somewhat more physically affectionate couple. They're legally married, where Mitch and Cam on Modern Family aren't. But I'm curious about sort of what, you know, does that show make networks more likely to take a chance on a show about a gay married couple? You know, what's it like operating in that space?
So far, most networks seem interested in shows that sort of skip the romance thing and go right to parenting, and I think it's because anyone can identify with parenting. They're so worried about making the story universal. Any writer knows they know how to write parenting stories. The romance may be something where people feel that it's going to require translation, and they're worried about people having to watch this romance and translate it to something they understand. So I think it's opened up the space, but they skipped a chunk, and it's an important chunk. And so I feel like we're filling that void in a way that hasn't really been done yet. But as I say, I think it's inevitable that it will.
I couldn't have said that more eloquently.
Yes.
Perfect. I do think that it'll, I think it's inevitable, and I think maybe Husbands is that inevitability.
Well, and I mean, you mentioned sort of the question of responsibility and parenting, and you know, I guess I was curious, and one of the things that really struck me about Husbands is that for so long the narrative has been that, you know, gay people were sexually irresponsible, and that's why a lot of them got a terrible disease and died. Gay people were irresponsible, and that's why they shouldn't be allowed into the institution of marriage because they would somehow break it. Not really sure I understand that one, but it is an argument that is out there. And, you know, is equality a matter not just of getting your legal rights, but the right to make mistakes and be irresponsible and fix them without being sort of condemned or outcast?
Yeah, the notion that you have to be the model minority is not easy for any group.
Because then you're still proving yourself to the majority, and equality is not having to prove yourself and just being who you really are.
Well, I think a large part of that is perpetuated by the gay community, though, because they're very concerned about how they're coming across in pop culture. And I did a panel with Vlad in DC just a couple of nights ago, and that was a really, really big topic, was, you know, why are we playing killers, and why are we playing drug addicts? Like, where are the perfect model citizens of gay people? And my response was that that's not interesting to watch. If you watch somebody who's faithful to their spouse and has a great job and is an all-around great guy, like, where's your conflict, you know? And so I think that the idea is to take somebody who's responsible-ish, but flawed, just like anyone would be, just like any character would be, and letting their sexuality be what it may, without worrying about how it comes across in terms of equality.
If you look at all the most beloved characters of TV, they're almost universally the most flawed. Buffy, Starbuck, House, like, these are deeply flawed people. And I mean, Buffy wasn't terribly flawed. She had a little tendency to be standoffish with her friends sometimes, but she should have put them in. But flaws make characters interesting. And if you can be flawed but endearing, and I think Cheeks and Brady are excellent examples of that. Like, we tried to find ways to make them like mutually exasperating in ways we would understand, and yet you also understand how lovable they are. And yeah, I think that's much better than sort of paragons. You write a paragon character, you inevitably reduce them to, they have a funny runner where, you know, they have 2 dates to the prom. You know, you end up with pablum instead of something meaty.
Well, and I wanted to get back to the question, the word universality has come up a lot during this panel. And one thing I'm always curious about is the choice between writing, for example, gay love stories in a way that theoretically makes them more universal, Or should the goal be to try and sort of bend the curve on what's considered a universal story? Should the goal be that we make gay love stories exactly like straight ones, or that we build an audience and a fan base that's more able to see themselves represented in stories about gay couples and gay people?
Yeah, this came out of this story that someone told me. It may totally be apocryphal, so don't call Harvey Fierstein and say she said. But the story was that Harvey Fierstein was approached by someone who said, "I love the story you're telling here because it's universal." And he said, "Screw you. I have spent my whole life watching straight love stories and having to translate in my head. It's your turn. You translate. I'm not going to try to make something universal for you. I'm going to write something specific, and it's your job to deal with that." And I don't know. I mean, is it good? Is it right? It's eloquent. It sounds good. But isn't universality good? I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of torn on this point.
I think that the best stories are universal, and I know that I guess translation is a subjective thing, because I mean, depending on your experience, maybe you can't see it as universal, or maybe you're having to translate it. I like the stories that speak to you on a level where, they just resonate with you, and you don't have to translate, and I think that's a lot more powerful. And I understand the point of view in saying, like, now you're gonna have to translate it, bitch, you know what I mean? Like, kind of being angry about it, but I don't know if that's going to really be as transcendent as something universal.
And I suppose it's all subjective anyway. If you watch Sleepless in Seattle, you're translating yourself into Meg Ryan anyway. Like you're always projecting when you watch. So maybe it's more about the viewer being automatically doing the translation without even noticing. That's what we need to arrive at. And maybe that's what he was saying there was something like that. I don't know. Yeah, it's so when you start thinking about it, you sort of fold in on yourself in an origami way.
Yeah, growing up, I fell for all the love stories and the romantic straight love stories. I imagined myself in there, and
But were you Julia Roberts, or were you Hugh Grant?
See, that's what I'm questioning. Yes, I didn't know, but I think it's just something I unconsciously did. So it's like, why can't the hetero crowd do the same thing? I mean, they just got to get past the kiss. I mean, that's the part that just kind of like, but once they get past that, they can start open their hearts, have a little compassion, and see themselves, empathy. This is what the world needs, is empathy.
Well, and how much of a hurdle do you think that is? Because, we were talking about Modern Family a little bit, and the show had to invent a whole storyline about how, Mitch and Cam aren't that physically affectionate to excuse the fact that the show never shows them being physically affectionate or attracted to each other. How much do you think that's an obstacle, and how much do you think that's sort of an overblown?
I think it's completely overblown. I think that for every person that you have turning the television off for that, you'd have 5 more people turning it on. I think that it would be considered edgy. I think that there are a lot of people that seem to be into it, right? Okay? And clap your hands if you think guys kissing is sexy. So yeah, I think that you'll have a lot of people saying, "Oh, turn that sinful crap off." And then you'll have an entire room full of people saying, "Oh my God, this is finally on television, yes!" So, yeah, it's totally
do the
overblown.
gatekeepers see it as over?
Well, right, but they never do. I mean, they haven't gone there, so they wouldn't know. And you never know there until you, or you never know it until you go there, and then somebody goes there and everyone else says, "Oh, well, yeah, we knew that was going to work. We're working on one of those ourselves now."
Seriously, yeah. You just need one network to take a risk.
And then every other network says it was their idea.
Well, we've talked a lot today about how what Husbands is doing is simultaneously radical and totally where the rest of America, if not the entertainment industry, is. One area where the show is sort of ahead of its time, and again in that sort of small science fictional way, is that we have Brady as an out athlete and an out successful professional athlete. And, Sean, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you, put that role together and tapped into some of those emotions, considering that there isn't a lot of precedent.
I played football. I played lacrosse. I didn't play baseball, but I still understood that the locker room is the final it's the last area for a man to exist without any interference. And so I feel like for an out athlete who, you know, and I think that'll happen in our lifetime as well, I'm sure it'll rattle some people at first because that's their final safe place, if you will. I don't know. These testosterone men feel so threatened. But how did I put that together? I think it just came out with my own experiences. I mean, I didn't really think about it too much when I was playing it for the show. It was, I was more concerned about keeping up the image for the gays, you know, rather than the actual athlete part. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. I mean, it's the same thing as with the gay marriage. It'll just change. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Well, I was wondering if that could open up different kinds of sports stories as well as different kinds of romantic stories. I really want to see you guys do a story that puts Cheeks in the wives' box at the Dodgers.
We have plans. If we get to do more, I've actually talked to a professional baseball player and his wife, and talked about, like, what is it like in the stands for the wives? What do the wives do, like, backstage? And there's Bible study and baby showers and bedazzling and everything you could hope that Cheeks could blunder into. And, like, there's all these rules about the wife of the rookie can't host the baby shower for the big star on the team that Cheeks would just blunder through.
Well, in the hierarchy of who's the queen bee, depending on how much money your husband makes,
right,
because it's public information, then it's fascinating. It's like a sorority that you have to belong to, like it or not.
Yeah. And the Cheeks would be the only spouse who would be probably allowed in the locker room, yeah? So.
Well, and that's the other thing, is that, like, Brady, like, wants, you know, Cheeks to be there. That's the expectation, and Cheeks is like, I really don't want to hang out with these women. They're like cattier than I can imagine, and plastic surgery and the money, and, like, I really don't want to do this. And Brady's like, you know, you gotta be at my games, like, you gotta support me. And so Cheeks is like, all right, fine, for our marriage, all right, this will be what I do. And so to see him, like, force himself to get along with these women, I think is gonna be good.
And if you do it wrong, it comes back to the locker room. It's another thing I wonder, if the wife makes a mistake, Brady plays. If Cheeks makes a mistake, Brady pays for it in the locker room. So, like, does he want? What if he wanted you to go? Then you go. You screw something up. Now he doesn't want you to go anymore. Now you're
because I'm not going to go quietly. I'm going to go in, you know, pillbox hat and suddenly mock them. I'm fun. Who are you? Right. This has been so fun.
Don't we just have to write more?
Yeah. Well, I've gotten to ask these folks a lot of questions. I want to open the floor up to you. We've got a microphone in the middle, so if folks want to line up, you can ask some questions about it.
Hot cake.
Hot
Hot cake.
They sell like themselves. I wish they wrote it. I think you spent a lot of time talking about how you're going down to venues in social issues. But I'm curious, I'd love to hear more about the ground that you're breaking in terms of new media. Because, you know, you talked about how this isn't, you know, on something that's on network TV, and you've done it on the web. And Jane, you talked about how, you know, if there's another season. So I would love to hear more about, you know, how that came to be, and the benefits for you creatively, and maybe some of the challenges as well.
Cheeks was already like.
Who's talking to you?
Well, no,
Cheeks was already sort of the king of YouTube. Cheeks knew how to do that. I knew this was a show that sort of was inevitably feels like it should end up being a TV show, but clearly was not the most pitchable thing, particularly the way we want to do it, where I wanted my cast, you know. So it made sense to make it now, to make it the way I wanted to do it, that we would do it online. Cheeks knew how to make that happen, and sort of knew and talked beautifully about the power of social media and how a web series, it doesn't have to be less than, how important it is. In terms of whether it goes forward and continues as a web series or a TV show, there's pros and cons to both. But I don't know, do you have more to say? Because I always feel like when we get into this social media stuff, I feel like I'm just saying words that I have heard.
Yeah, I mean, the idea was to have a platform that didn't have filters or censors where, it's the internet, you can do whatever you want to do. And I think that because technology is in the hands of so many people now, there's a perception that if it's on the internet, it's not good or it's subpar. And I think when you take people who work in television and film and the arts, and you get talented people, and you get enough money and people who know what they're doing, you can make something that's an exceptional quality for the internet. And I think that the internet needs more of that because it's the only way that it's going to become what it is becoming, which is a platform that's just like television.
I mean, right now, in some room near us is Felicia Day. But don't get up and run. But proving, that this can work, this can be a viable way to bring entertainment to people.
Yeah.
I don't know if that quite answered it.
No, I thought that was good. That was sort of what I was wondering about because it seems like it allows you more creative freedom.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Do you feel that there are any drawbacks to not being, part of a more traditional?
Oh, fewer viewers, fewer eyeballs. That's the big drawback. It would be lovely to, have 10 million people watching it.
Yeah, well, and the perception as well. I think that it's, it's on the internet.
Yeah, then that may be fading. Hopefully that perception.
Yeah, quickly I think it's changing.
Yeah, but the viewer stuff is still, even though, which is weird because the internet should be bigger than TV, but it is still smaller. But the advantages are absolutely, when we were on the set, we could just say, oh, let's change that, let's do, without worrying, second-guessing anyone. Is there a showrunner above me, a network, a studio, all those layers above you, I didn't have to worry about. We didn't have to worry about. We could change anything we wanted, go in the editing room, we could make any decisions we wanted, and that was it. Okay, this is the version we're going to broadcast. Oh, and we can swear. And we don't have to count kisses and stuff. There always used to be a rule back when I was writing on Ellen that up until the point of Ellen, there was always the sort of rule that, oh yeah, for a funny bit, you could have a woman kiss another woman, but you couldn't have her do it twice because if she did it twice, she liked it. Like, we didn't have to worry about any of that stuff. We were telling our own story.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Is it cool to ask a Buffy question?
Sure.
Does bisexuality exist in the Buffyverse?
Yes, I would say so. I mean, Willow truly loved Oz, and then she happened to fall in love with Tara. My point of view is that then who knows who Willow would fall in love with after that. She seems to be staying on the girl side, but I think bisexuality is different. And Andrew, I think, might very well be an example as well. We've seen Andrew with beautiful women on his arms.
It seemed in season 8, as well as when Buffy got
Right.
or whether she gay or straight, it didn't seem to enter into the discussion. So.
Right, yeah, the Buffy Satsu connection. Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's a possibility that all of the characters on Buffy are bisexual. I know there was a line that Joss always talked about giving a line to either Spike or Angel, I can't remember which one, in which he would say, like, when you've been alive for 100 years, you think there's anything you haven't tried? So, we don't know what Giles was doing when he was Ripper.
I can imagine.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
I guess I was sort of wondering if you happen to have any kind of inside scoop behind the scenes Comic-Con thing that would explain why this is scheduled at the exact same time as Felicia Day.
It's a conspiracy. They hate new media. They're trying to divide us, you guys. We need to unite.
And I guess also for Jane Espenson, because I know a lot of people like this, do you feel that sort of clout that you get for being in the Whedon Club, like anybody, like the fact that you have done, anybody who's done anything, I must watch at least one episode of anything you've done type of thing?
Nice. Yeah, well, the scheduling of the thing is because they're solving the world's biggest logic puzzle, and we were a late addition. I think they just fit us in where they had time, and there are a lot of constraints that they have. I don't think that there's anything behind it. It's unfortunate, but the clout, yeah, having your name associated with the Whedonverse, it means that people will watch my marriage equality comedy, which looks like totally unrelated, but the Whedon name is magical, and Joss and Felicia were the two people I first went to for advice on this, so that's another way in which it's clout, is that I can go to the very best people for advice. So yeah, the ways Joss has improved my life just keep multiplying.
Thank you very much.
Hello.
Hi.
My question is for Jane. I was just asking this question about your writing style. I mean, I know you do writing sprints and stuff. Is that something you've always done, or you picked up later on?
Questions about the writing sprints, is that
Yeah.
something I've always done? If you follow me on Twitter, this is a thing I do where I'll just announce that, there's some sprinters out there. I'll announce like I'm going to be writing for the next hour, and stepping away from the computer, you can do it too, and then we'll meet back here in an hour, and it's really successful. People are like finishing their dissertations, and it's amazing. And yeah, it is sort of something I've always done, where it just makes you get a lot more progress done with the time limit than with the task limit. If you're like, I'm going to write Act 1 today, then you're guaranteeing yourself you will write no more than Act 1. Whereas if you go, I'm going to write for the next hour or 3 hours or whatever it is solid, you could get massive amounts done because you're on a roll and you're focused and you're typing as fast as you can, and you'd be amazed at how much you can get done in an hour of solid work where you don't let anything else in your head. And it's easier to get started on doing it. You can't put it off because it's just an hour. It's an hour. So you don't have that awful stomach churning, like, ooh, I have to look at these pages of this project where I know I'm not in a good place. Like, that all goes away.
Hi. I wanted to ask some logistical questions. So I really like that it's like 2.5 minutes on average. I feel like there's a setup, there's a punchline, there's some narrative in the middle. How is it that you decided to do that? Why did you choose to use YouTube, but first have like some of the episodes that are on Blip? Is that possible?
Yeah.
Okay. Why was that a decision for you to go that way? And then for the future, sorry for so many questions. If you come back, does it make sense? Like the Guild, they'll have people where it's like, okay, here's a regular cast, but then they'll say, and now, ladies and gentlemen, Nathan Fillion will pop up. Does it make sense to have a big name show up because you have the avenue to do that, or is it better to leave them to the side and just focus on the cast that you have?
Well, we had Nathan Fillion pop up, so we are proud Nathan Fillion pop up. But yeah, we have guest cast because it draws in eyeballs. But the episode length question, that's a very good Cheeks question.
Yes. I just think shorter's better, you know, and what I was going for was people at the office. How many of you watch this at the office? Good. How many of you have watched from like school or on a mobile device? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I wanted people to go, oh, I'm in line at the grocery store. Oh, there's a new episode of Husbands. I'll watch that. You know, when something is 10 minutes long, you just can't do that. You have to invest in it. You have to get into it. And I am all for content that does that, you know, on television and even on the web. The longer form content I think is great, but I think especially when you're starting out and you're trying to grab people's attention, the best way to do it is very short and punchy. And I was actually influenced by a web series called Very Mary Kate. I don't know if you've ever seen that. You know, Very Kate, yeah, right. Sadface.com/bummer, where she plays Mary Kate Olsen, if any of you have seen it, and it's hilarious. And she actually got a deal with College Humor. But hers are very, very short and punchy. They're 1.5 minutes. And I thought, when I saw that, the only thing that I would do different is make it a little more cohesive in terms of a story and a character you really connect with, and it's not quite as over the top. So that was sort of where we started for Husbands.
We're almost out of time, so we do the last two questions of everyone promises to be very snappy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi. I guess I'm wondering, where do you see future of writing as far as like gay characters go? You mentioned you like the fact that you can write characters that aren't straight up stereotypes.
where's the future of it going? Well, I hope it just continues to be more of the spectrum visible on TV, more main characters. After Alton did this amazing study about how many gay characters die on TV, and it was this horrible bloodbath of a number. And then they realized, they had this, I thought was a really smart analysis of it, which said, like, this isn't because TV writers are like, let's kill the gay character, it's because TV writers are, let's kill the supporting character. And gay characters are always only supporting characters. So that's what I hope we see the future of gay characters is becoming main characters and living.
Yes.
Yeah, it would be. I mean, I just to thinking back on that too. It would be great to see like a show like ours explore what it's like to be an out athlete because we don't know what that looks like, or to be in getting a cup because we don't know what that looks like. So, it leading the way. We just don't know, and this would be a great opportunity to discover what that is. Maybe show America. Get a little heated there.
He's a little angry.
Hi there. I know the show is kind of in its infancy, and it's probably something that would go on further down the line. But I was wondering if you would address the issue of monogamy between this couple, and then also just basically after the honeymoon period, and basically build up a drama. I'm reminded of Roseanne when it got very serious toward the end, and they were actually dealing with drama.
After they won the lottery,
yeah.
dealing with how do we spend all this money and.
Right when you got depressed.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he got depressed and then he had a heart attack, right?
Yeah.
And then Jackie was a lesbian.
Darlene was actually not with the.
Oh yeah, the last episode. What was that?
I thought my entire childhood.
It was like the writers saying, this whole thing that happened the last season, never mind, that was bad. Yeah.
Yeah, and toward the end of Mad About You, they were both unfaithful, at least emotionally. I can't remember if anyone actually, if they slept with someone else. That is a thing. That is a thing you do in season 7 or 8, and I don't think I would ever do it with these characters. These characters.
I think it might come up because it is, especially in the gay community. I was just having this conversation. That there are a lot of married couples that have open relationships, and I think that monogamy is a little bit different for many gay people, and so I think that maybe that would be a conversation. By the way, is this something where we bring somebody home sometimes?
No.
Just checking. I mean, I'm not saying that's what I want. I mean, no, I wasn't looking at him. Leave me alone. Can I just look? I think maybe that conversation. Right. But I like the idea that they're monogamous and that they don't break those bonds because they have very strict prenuptial agreements.
Yeah, it's more difficult for Cheeks' character and Cheeks to deal with that topic.
That's another thing to get into legal matters, actually arrange around.
Well, and then maybe there's an episode where I hire somebody to seduce Brady because if he cheats on me, I get $5 million.
And there may be episodes too because we're both celebrities in the show. An out pro baseball player is very attractive, so is an out celebrity. So there's also
and
that.
athletes are
Become
whores.
Ashton Kutcher.
Yeah, that's the stuff that makes them attractive. That's all that makes them. Yeah, they would totally be flirted with, and they'd have to navigate that. But I love the idea of a show, a gentle, sweet, good-hearted show where it always comes back to the two of them. Yeah. And even if they have permission to flirt with someone else, that would be. I don't think that there would be anything beyond that because they love each other.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all so much for coming out today.
Best, and tell all your friends, husbandsandseries.com. We want to see those numbers. Like that.
Yeah, no, really. I mean, truly. Here's my experience real quick. People say, we want more. Where can I see this more? Is this gonna... I cannot stress enough that you have to help us. People are constantly asking and saying they want more, but if you are not proactively sharing this with every single person you know and getting people to talk about it, I don't mean once. You share something on your Facebook feed, it shows up for that long, it goes away. People are distracted, they need to see it again and again and again and again. That's why if you follow me on Twitter, I'm constantly like, hey, here's the husband's thing again, you guys. So if you want more, we really want to give you more, but we cannot do that without the audience. So while I have you all here, please understand that is what you can do.
And it's not just enough to retweet love at Team Husbands. It's got to have husbandsandseries.com so that people can just click and go right and see.
And if you know people that have blogs, or if you know people on Twitter that have a lot of followers, or if you know any sort of outlet, really get creative in how you share it. And that's really how we're going to be able to give you more, because all that matters to the powers that be are numbers. Yeah. It's an advertising game. So help us grow our numbers and we will give you more. We want to.
Because this is all Team Husbands. This is
yes, that's why it's called Team.
You guys can help change the world. Honestly, yeah. Cool. Oh,
we're signing right now at tables 6 and 7 in the autograph area, I believe.
Okay.
North Pavilion. So if anyone wants to get anything signed, instead of doing it here, come up and do it up there. I believe
it starts at 1:30.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.